So I've been trying to make this video for almost a year now, and what would happen is, I wrote the script, I listened to everything, and I would film something and then scrap it, and I'd film something and scrap it. I wouldn't have time to edit, and I think I'm just going to make this kind of a more casual thing, just me sitting here talking about some albums, because the list is too long, and I can't make it this, frilly, gargantuan video. It's going to be, 3 hours long. But if you don't know who Billy Cobb is, he is a YouTuber, he is a musician, and he's been making music since 2016, about 7 years, and he has a really long and sprawling discography, and a lot of it ranges in quality. Sometimes you gotta dig through an album to find some hidden gems, and sometimes just the whole thing is really good, and I wanted to rank all of them. And I'm including his EPs too, because a lot of his output actually comes from his EPs and not just his albums. I'm not going to count the 3-song EPs, like Valentine's Day and Cool People Music. I don't think those count. They're not long enough. And I'm not going to count his 2 compilation albums. So here we go. This is going to be a long one. I forgot to mention this, but also no cover projects. So Songs I Stole 1, I think is really good. I really like those songs there. And Songs I Stole 2 is fine. I think the album art's so fucking ugly, though. And yeah, he's just having fun making covers. I don't think these count, really. Yeah. This thing's bad. So, I mean, most people would say his first album is his worst project. But I'm going to be a contrarian, and I'm going to say Dancing with the Lights Off is Billy Cobb's worst EP. And it's not even the songwriting, or actually, no, the songwriting is bad, but the instrumentation, things could be worse. But there's just vibes from this album that are just so wrong. And even the song, In Case You Need a Song to Dance To, which is almost one of his bigger hits, he plays it live. Even that one, I think, is kind of weird. Vibes are off. And just everything about this EP is just so weird. And I don't like the way he's singing. He seems really pissed off for no reason. And holy shit, the song Social Justice Warriors is perhaps it's his worst song, obviously. And it's aged the worst, I think. It's aged so badly that he changed the name to Fuck People Like This on Spotify and streaming services, so make that what you will. Oh, I just can't talk about this thing. It's been I have not listened to this in so long, but this one made me angry listening to it, way more than Abstract. Abstract was just boring, but this is just, oh my god. So this is Billy's first thing he ever made, and it's really clear that it's the first thing he'd ever made. Mostly because just he wears his influences way too much on this album. And even though he later became known as the Weezer guy, he's kind of drawing more My Chemical Romance influence on this album. And that makes a lot of sense because the Mad Sunder, was that? No, maybe, I don't know. Romance Isn't Dead, that was the name of his project. Before this was actually some fictitious band that he made the year before, in 2015, and there's still a Twitter page of that band account, and it's really funny. But this album just isn't really good. Not for the same reasons as the other one. This one's just kind of boring. There's a lot of slow piano ballads and stuff, and just slow ballads that aren't really that interesting. I feel there's a few good kind of punk songs like Euphoria Wave or Blackberry Lip Balm. Those ones are pretty good, and there's there's a few problems here. The main one is his singing. It's not good at all. He's always yelling, and he's kind of monotonous a lot of the times too. And he's off key. And the second problem is the mixing, and it's kind of excusable since it's the first album he'd ever made, but some of the tracks just become unlistenable. It affects the vocals mostly, and the bad mixing goes hand in hand with the bad singing, which just makes like all the vocal portions of this album kind of hard to listen to. A song like Cyberdrive felt really good because it's like an instrumental track. There's no singing on it, and you know, for a first album, I mean, I think things could be a lot worse, but there's a few highlights, but just the whole thing isn't good. This one's a little better. It's like a 3 out of 10. Still bad. Too Rad to Be Sad is the political album or political EP that Billy describes it as in his own ranking. And this thing has the same problems as Dancing with the Lights Off. All of the songs kind of follow that like 2017 conservative, I'm a white man and you can't tell me what to do. You out here like trying to do civil rights and not hating people for their race or fucking gender. That's messed up, man. It's like shit like that. And honestly, it's bad. It's really bad. But I put this a little bit higher than the other two because the first song, Answers No One Knows, is like okay. It's not bad. It's pretty good. Even though the lyrics are kind of cringe, the rest of this EP is not good at all. So yeah, 3 out of 10. This EP feels like that one kid who took the joke way too far and would just like not shut the fuck up about it. Cause like what happened with this thing is Billy made this like shit post about, I don't know, it was like a Tumblr post or something, and people responded well to the shit post song. He made a full version of it, then he just made an EP with songs that sounded exactly like that, which I don't know how you describe this sound. I guess it's like, what does Rate Your Music say this is? Rate Your Music describes this as industrial hip hop and comedy rap. Sure, I guess you can call it that. Everything about this, it just sounds all the same. It's not fun to listen to. Outdated memes like the fucking combination Pizza Hut and Taco Bell thing. The Queen Has a Penis is like, sounds okay, but like, it's kind of like transphobic, so I can't really bump to it. This one, I guess, isn't like as bad as the others because it's like short, and it's not like as egregiously terrible, but it's still not good. This is like a 3 out of 10 too. Yeah. Pretty Songs for Ugly People. I mean, this one's just so short. It's like one song basically, and it's literally just Neutral Milk Hotel, acoustic. It's like so nothing. It's not offensive or anything, but it's so nothing that it's like not mid. It just exists. So I don't know what to say about this. There's nothing, like there's no reason you would ever listen to this. I don't know. This is like 4 out of 10, sure. I want to kick Baby Yoda in the... Post Bedroom Pop was one that like I kind of had high hopes for, because the name sounds kind of cool and the album art's kind of cool, but it's kind of like really weird because you start with Next Stop Wilbury or Willoughby, and it's just like kind of like strange and unsettling, and then it's followed by All Work, which is like grinding a 9 to 5, and it's just like kind of disturbing music, and then like it just completely switches it up with I Want to Kick Baby Yoda in the Ribs. I hate this song, and it does not fit on this EP, and it's just like a stupid meme. Like, why are you being mean to the little guy? He did nothing. It's so stupid, and I don't know. I just don't like this song. And, you know, then it's, after it, it's, Is This What It's Like? I actually kind of like this one. I think the vocals sound kind of cool. And it's just really, like, dissonant the whole time, and I like the production, but, you know, this whole thing is kind of just, like, it's not that bad. Yeah, there's definitely worse, but, like, It's just so tonally strange, and the first two songs aren't really all that good, so I don't know, this one's a little better. Still like a 4 out of 10, I'd say. So Halloween 5, it's weird that we're starting here. I don't know if I've explained this, but every year Billy does like a Halloween themed project kind of in the middle of October. Sometimes it's an album, sometimes it's an EP. In 2021, it was a single. That's the thing that'll show up regularly, and the one from 2020, which is Halloween 5, is kind of his most incomplete one, I feel like. You can definitely tell that, like, the concept of Halloween was, you know, kind of wearing thin, because 2019 had his, like, magnum opus, Halloween 4, so I assume the juices were running a little low, and he didn't really have enough to say on this. You know, the songs are okay. They kind of have like this like doom metal vibe. There's some songs though, like Dear Friend Who Watches Me Sleep. There's just this like organ that plays throughout the whole song, and it's just a weird combination. And Ballad of Count Karl von Kossel is just kind of like whatever. I don't think, yeah, like this thing's not that good. I don't know. If you want to get like kind of a similar vibe to this, but like done better, there's his single Seance, which came out I think like the next year, like the beginning of the next year in 2021, and does a much better job at kind of like capturing what he is like trying to accomplish on this album or on this EP. And he even said I think Seance is his favorite song that he's ever made. So you should listen to that instead, because this EP, not really any point to it. It's like a 4 out of 10. The Void is Billy Cobb's longest album, so I'm kind of just like gonna read some of my notes that I wrote. It's been a long time since that I've listened to this, and I think that like this album has some standouts, but I honestly find a lot of it like kind of blends together. I don't know if that has to do with, you know, the production on this is okay. I think just like, you know, the single stood out to me being pretty good, like venting to a tape recorder. And I don't really find like the lyrics very interesting on this album, except for Ode to the Homeland Generation. I kind of like, you know, kind of talking about growing up and like reaching adulthood. It's a theme that comes up more in his projects, but you know, I think it works well here. Something also, Fighting Beneath the Black Hole. His lyrics are about exactly what they sound like, and it's like a horrific battle that takes place beneath the black hole. And Billy kind of still has some vocal imperfections, and he reverts back to like a lot of the screaming from his first album. Although on the song Dead House, the screaming vocals actually sound very fitting. This album kind of takes a lot more heavy elements compared to anything that he's made before. Like Dead House and Open the Gates have like down-tuned guitars, and they're very like boom, 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 boom. Another highlight is The Paper Kingdom. It's the longest song, but it doesn't feel like it's wasting your time. It starts off as like a sweet piano ballad, and then goes into this like upbeat section. It's a great build-up and pacing, and then it just descends into this great end section, and it just goes hard. The last highlight here is Out of Reach, which is just like a solid kind of acoustic closer for the album. The thing is though, it sounds a lot like Dagger by Slowdive, and every time this or Dagger comes on, I cannot tell which song is playing. But I can't talk about this album without mentioning the song The Color Blue. It's kind of like Billy's attempt to rap, and it's really weird.
And red is the color of the blood of the dead, of a dog never fed, of a word never said, of a book never read, of a woman never wed to a man she spent too much time with. And red is the color of your eyes when you stay up too late. And red is the...
It sounds kind of like 21 Pilots. It's really strange. This is not something he ever did again, and I hope it's not something he does ever again. Throughout this whole album, it's kind of like most of the songs are like okay at best, and there's like a few standouts, but nothing's really like, you know, that bad. Even like Color Blue is kind of funnier more than is bad. But this is definitely like still like a stepping stone into like seeing him do better production, better arranged songs, and having more ambitious songs in general. And I think he somewhat delivered, but this still isn't my favorite, so it's gonna be like a 5 out of 10.
Does your grandmother know you're a whore?
Songs to Drive Off a Cliff in C major. is okay, I guess. The opener is like, eh. But the song Drive is actually kind of fun. I haven't listened to this in a long time, but I still have that one liked. I think it's pretty fun. You know, Does Your Grandmother Know That You're a Whore? It's kind of fun. Class at 17 is alright. I think this album, or this EP is like, kind of filler, but it's one of the better filler EPs that he's made. You know, there's nothing really about it that, like, stands out too much, but there's nothing about it that really, like, is bad. So, you know, 5 out of 10. It's alright. Dollar Store Diamonds sees Billy kind of going in, like, a different direction for his music. It's like, it incorporates a lot of horns. You know, I think, like, for some people this works really well, and they really like the ideas that are going on here. It just doesn't really work for me. You know, there's some songs that I think, like, are, like, they're all pretty good, or they're okay. Like, the title track on this EP, I think is pretty fun. But there's nothing really else that stood out to me. I haven't listened to anything on this for a long time, but, you know, when I first listened to it, nothing stood out for me except for the song Blue Mountains. But I can see how some people really like this, because a lot of people really do like Dollar Store Diamonds, but it just doesn't really click with me in a significant way. It's like a 6 out of 10. Halloween 3 is kind of like a disappointment, because I was a big fan of the first 2 Halloween installments. I think they're really fun. They kind of showed a more playful side of Billy's music that sort of gets drowned out by his more drab and serious material. But this one was kind of just like not as fun. There wasn't much to like say about it. It was another case of, I think, like he didn't have as many ideas for this one. It's always like the EP that follows the album that comes out. But this one is just kind of like, the song Toilet is a Portal to Hell. That one's just so fucking stupid, but it's really good. But, you know, there's nothing really here that I think, like, stood out to me particularly. It's not, like, one of the Halloween projects I would start with. So I guess it's fine. You know, I wish he took some more risks, and, like, he did some more weird stuff, and yeah, it's 6 out of 10.
She took a letter from the post office on 2nd Street.
Karma versus the Invisible Man. I was so let down by this album. I was so excited. This is the first one that I watched, like, the premiere for when it came out, and I just don't think it kind of, like, packs the same punch as some of his other stuff. There are some standouts here. I think Let Me Down is a really good song, I think. A way that he kind of limits himself on this album is a lot of the songs don't feature any distorted guitars, or I don't think any of them do. And just, I mean, it limits him creatively in some ways. And, you know, sometimes limits are good, but I just don't know if it works well. Here, I've listened to this a few times, and it just never really has clicked with me. The song Atlantic Horns is also really fun. Got some kind of like jazzy chorus and has a really good outro. Invisible Man is a good closer, I think. It's pretty it's actually really sad. And the song Fish in a Bowl is also just, I think, a good single. Some people don't like it, but I think it works really well. And I like the idea of the song. In general, I think this album is just kind of like lacking hooks and the punch that some of his other stuff has, but it's not bad. So I'd give this like a 6 out of 10. I had really high expectations for the Boro, because when Billy was featured in a magazine of like up and coming talent, he was told to like listen to this album as like an entry point. And I think there's definitely better spots to begin with on his discography, and this kind of felt like a combination of Strokes of Incarceration and Zerwee. And obviously the standout song is Grave, which I think is one of his best songs. His yelling is so good, it's crazy, and you know, it's so good, the song's so good that like it kind of just makes everything else on this EP just not look that great. Surf is a remade song that he had made before. It's okay, but I just think like the ideas are kind of lacking, and just the song had one really good single from it, and kind of hard to like justify the rest of this EP's existence. But maybe I need to re-listen to it. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but I just don't think this is like a great starting off point. This is like a 6 out of 10 as well. Halloween is Billy Cobb's first introduction to the series of his, and I think it works wonderfully, especially for something that he released in 2016. First years, I guess, are really rough for like starting out musicians, but I think like Halloween kind of showcased another side of Billy's songwriting that is a huge breath of fresh air compared to Abstract. Abstract kind of like feels like it's trying to be this really serious and take itself seriously and not take any risks. And Halloween is like this silly, goofy EP that is about like clowns and shit. And, you know, the songs feature very diverse instruments and styles, and it's just a much more like engaging listen. And, you know, there's songs like Killer Clowns, which kind of like, holy shit, I did not even remember that that was a thing that happened in 2016. Even though, like, it's still, you can tell it's like kind of early in his career, it's really good. And I think this is like a great spot to start and just kind of like listen to like how he, you know, how this whole series of Halloween EPs started. So this is actually pretty good. It's a 7 out of 10. It's not like super crazy insane, but it's still pretty good. I really wanted to like the SS Krill, but like there's so much passion in it. There's so much love and effort into this weird concept, and so many people like just love this album, but something about it just does not click with me. I guess maybe it's just the sea shanty aspect, or like there's something missing here for me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the songs aren't catchy enough. But like the whole gimmick of this album is it's like a gay pirate rock opera. The concept is actually explored quite well. It's just there's not really enough songs that like stick with me. A song like L'amour a été ri is kind of fun. The only song really that stood out to me was the opener, the SS Krill, and Runaway Whiskey River, which is like just a good song. And like I can understand if this is people's favorites, but just like something about this just does not click with me, but I can still recognize the effort put into it, and it's good. It's almost really good, but it's just not quite there. I would say this is like a 7.5 out of 10. I wouldn't feel right giving this a 7 out of 10, but it's really close. So Billy Cobb, the original Billy Cobb, is kind of like crazy how good this is for, you know, 2016 Billy. And it's just really like impressive. And listening to this alongside the new Bear album is kind of like, it's really cool because a lot of the elements on this EP translated over into his new album. The opener, What Am I Doing, is one of my favorite Billy Cobb songs. It's his first like excellent song. It's such a good like, I want to say like power pop. It's like punk rock. And just the chorus is so good. He reuses it on the new album, but I think it honestly fits much better here, and this song is so good. Sovereign Citizens is kind of funny. I think what he's complaining about and like making fun of in this song is kind of funny. And then there's J37 Studer, which is another song that he sampled later, and he actually remade it for compilation albums. And I actually like the original more. I think the instrumentation and the way Billy's singing as this really like weird and anxious voice actually fits better than the more like streamlined version that he does on the new version. And this song is like his first like kind of conceptual song where he's like pretending to be like this really nervous student who's like imagining a party in his head, and he's getting like even anxious thinking about it. And it's like this really cool concept, and this whole EP is just great to listen to. Honestly, if you wanted to like listen to something early from Billy Cobb, this is where you want to be. This is just an incredible starter to, well, it's not a starter, but it's like just a great first step for him, I think. So I'd give this an 8 out of 10. This is pretty good, or pretty great actually. And I think after this point on, I'm going to probably talk about these more, because just there's more to talk about, because I like talking about things I actually listen to more. Everything before this is kind of, I've only heard them either once or occasionally, but everything after this point is kind of something that I listen to frequently, so I'm going to have more to say about it. Halloween 2, released in 2017, is basically like the first Halloween, except just a step up in every possible way. It's longer, it has more diversity on the songs are catchier, they have more interesting themes. Some standouts include At the Devil's Ball, with just kind of like this show tunesy sound to it. I'm Only the Frankenstein Monster is kind of like this, I don't know, it's just like a fun kind of like, not danceable, but I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like folksy. It's a fun song. It's about Frankenstein. It's cool. And then I really like Freak City. I feel like Freak City is actually a predecessor to I Block the Rain, with this kind of like 80s inspiration to it. And I just really like the way the song like sounds. And yeah, I mean, there's other great songs on this that I just haven't heard in a long time, but honestly, this is one of the best Halloween projects. I think it's also really good for 2017 output, and I would recommend this to everyone, especially people who love Halloween and kind of the Halloween ideas. Forgot to record this part, but it's an 8 out of 10. Trash, I think, is an underrated EP. This was the latest thing he had made when he made his first ranking all of his discography video of his own, which I thought was interesting. It's crazy to me that, like, when Billy made that video of him ranking everything in his discography, he had yet to do anything Zerwee related, and where he, like, actually found some fame. So watching that video is kind of interesting. But I think this album, or this EP, sorry, I keep saying that. I keep saying, like, EPs are albums, but whatever. I think it's actually really good, and every song here is kind of like a standout, which is kind of what a lot of his, especially early EPs, fall victim to, is it usually they feel like there's like one good idea, and then like 3 filler songs, and they feel kind of pointless. But this is kind of one of the first ones where it feels like everything has a purpose, and everything fits properly. I think I Hate You More Than the News, and I especially hate the news, is a really fun song. You know, it's like very vague about, you know, someone you don't like, ranting about them, kind of like Low to Your God, the song, basically. I actually really like I Want to Be Spider-Man. I think it's such a stupid concept to a song where he's just like listing facts about Spider-Man and like things he does. And I really like just kind of like the airy sound to the instrumental, which I think like works really well for a song about Spider-Man. And I like kind of how like halfway through the song, like the narrator is kind of losing it, and he starts just like saying nonsense, and it's just such a fun song. Michael Cera playing Scott Pilgrim, playing Marlon Brando something. I can't see the whole name. This one's really fun. I like kind of like the tempo change, and it kind of has like a emo vibe to it, I guess. I don't really know how to explain. I like kind of him imitating Michael Cera. And make of this what you will. I'm surprised this one's kind of like a really popular song of his, but this one's really fun. It's kind of like a Ween song in some ways. It has like these weird lyrics. And I just think this EP in general is just like, it's really thematically consistent throughout, being like having these weird zany ideas. And, you know, the instrumentation also fits well. And I just think it's really good, and I think you should give this a listen. This is like an 8 out of 10. I get to do something fun for this one. Oh my god. Jesus Christ. I have this one. So, Zerwee is his, like, big kahuna project, and the one that everyone knows about. It's weird. I know people who, like, have never heard of Billy Cobb, and they've listened to this EP, which is kind of weird. I find it so strange that this is the thing that's like popped off, because it's such a it's like a gimmick album. It's not like something that defines Billy Cobb, but maybe that's the point. And people just want to hear kind of like Weezer vibes. And you know, it does the job. It has, like, you know, the more I've listened to Weezer over the years, the more, like, I realize, wow, yeah, this is such a good imitation of the style. You know, the guitars are so similar. The way Billy's singing is so much like Rivers Cuomo. It is insane how, like, reflective his vocals are of, like, Weezer. You know, I think all the songs here are pretty good. You know, especially 1955 and the Shell Shack. Those ones are, like, standouts in my opinion. The other two are pretty good. I think they just are really catchy, which is a reason why this kind of, like, you know, stands out for most people. Like, even dumb songs for virgins to cry to, like the like, that's a catchy hook. For me, this, like, stood out more to me because I was not really a Weezer fan when I first heard this. I think everything about this just kind of, like, feels fresh. And even though it's a gimmick EP, I think it is, like, something good that he made. And I hope one day something else that he makes surpasses the like status of Zerwee, but you know, I think for what it is, it's pretty good. And honestly, it's really good. I'd give this an 8 out of 10. I didn't have very high expectations for this EP, but honestly, like, when I first heard it, it kind of blew me away. Those first 3 songs are just, like, so good, and I don't know what it is about this. I think it's the production that just stands out so much compared to anything else he's made. The drums are they sound like shit, but in the best way possible, and there's, like, these really loud synths, and the guitars sound a certain way. Everything is just kind of, like, on point here. You know, Girls Are Hot and I'm Afraid of Them is kind of like a goofy premise for a song, but I like kind of the way that it bounces back and forth between, like, the ukulele parts and the, you know, loud parts. Tingly Boy is one of also my favorite Billy Cobb songs ever. I think the chorus is so catchy, and honestly, like, lyrically, this song is really interesting too. Just the idea of this person who, like, fascinated by the outside world, but, like, is so deeply afraid of it too that they, like, stay inside, is kind of just, like, so sad to me. But it's also another song where the instrumentals and everything shines through. Queen of Shagadelia is really funny. It's about Austin Powers. And I just think kind of, like, the lazy nature of this song is just really good. Astral Projecting, Through Liminal Spaces, and Graduating Life are both good songs on their own merits, but, I mean, they don't, like, stick out to me nearly as much. But this whole EP is just it's another example of a really consistent sound that works really well. And I think, honestly, he should do more kind of with this more, like, garage rock sound, or, like, something kind of more, like, lo-fi. I don't know how to describe this, but, like, if you hear it, you'll know what I mean. And I honestly think this is one of his best EPs, and I was really surprised when I first heard this. And you should definitely give it a listen. I'd give this a 9 out of 10. Halloween 6 is the latest Halloween thing that he's released by the time of me recording this video. I actually didn't originally write anything down for this when I first wrote the script because it hadn't come out yet. I don't know where I'd place this. It's like the same level of quality as 2007, I'd say. And it's kind of really showing how much better Billy is at, like, perfecting a project before he releases it. He used to definitely, like, kind of just jumble things together and release it without polishing anything, really. But, like, so far, all of his recent releases have been, like, he's been keeping the quality control up. And Halloween oh, did I say 6? I meant 7. I forgot that this is not Halloween 6. Yeah, this is Halloween 7, actually. It opens perfectly with October. It's one of my favorite songs from any Halloween project. It just has this, like, nostalgic feel to it, and the acoustic guitars are so nice. And just, I love the intro as well. Yeah, everything about that song is just perfect. It's a perfect song. Ghosted gives me a lot of Radiohead vibes, especially like How to Disappear Completely. It's not my favorite on this EP, but I think it definitely does a great job at, emulating this ghostly sound to it. Bloodsucker's really fun. It's like this kind of like, they're going to get you kind of song about like a vampire, and it's just like really catchy, and it's got this great like rhythm to it. Salem has like kind of these like Alex G vibes to it, and it's like recounting, what happened in Salem. I think more specifically in The Crucible, because I don't remember how much of The Crucible is based on reality, but I think it's a really good, like, kind of longer song, and it goes through changes in it, and just this whole EP is really good, and it's more dynamic and diverse than 2007, I think, which makes it a little bit better. Honestly, like, this is one of his best Halloween projects. It's not as kind of, like, ambitious as Halloween 4, which we'll get to, but I think with kind of like where he's at with the projects, this is the best thing he could have made. So I'd give this like a 9 out of 10. I actually changed my mind while I was editing this. 2007 is a better EP. So, yeah. Billy released this EP last year in May. It was kind of like a breath of fresh air after the kind of letdown that Karma versus the Invisible Man was. And I think this EP actually shines really well. Golden Years is a fantastic opener, and it kind of has this like, this whole EP's like about growing up and losing some of the childhood innocence you have dealing with age. And Golden Years is a perfect opener, and I love kind of like these sliding synths that happen throughout the whole thing. It exists in Golden Years in the kind of synth solo, and Live Forever has that keyboard intro that's really fun. And all the songs here are great. Pink Lemonade is another great example. It has kind of that like, I like at the end where he's kind of like saying, what is he saying? Oh, he's saying ground, and he's getting like louder and louder and louder. And just this whole EP is just so good. The production is great. It kind of like is an evolution of Zerwee's sound with kind of like his own spin on it. So I think that's like something really good, and he should, I think this is a perfect project, and not a perfect project, but it certainly demonstrates so many good qualities of Billy's songwriting, the way he composes music and instruments it. And I really like the cover art too. I don't know like why. I think it's just like the strange contrast of this like fucking demonic looking figure next to like this bright day at a park. I just really love 2007, and this is like a 9 out of 10 easy. So the day after I start editing this video, Billy Cobb releases a brand new project, In My Restless Dreams. It's a 4-song EP, and he wrote it while playing Silent Hill, and all the songs are about Silent Hill and are inspired by the game. And personally, I've never played Silent Hill, but you don't have to enjoy this album, because this is one of his kind of like more atmospheric EPs, I think, and it's very like dark in some ways. It utilizes some shoegaze elements throughout some of the songs, especially the first and last song. And the first song, In My Restless Dreams, is easily the best one here. The shoegaze elements add so much, and his singing is really good, and the way that the song is paced is excellent. The second song, I See That Town, is a great second song because it has this slow build up and then it kind of explodes near the end. The third song is kind of divisive for me because the chorus is kind of like, I don't know how to feel about it. It can be a little corny because of like the octaved harmony, and he's like singing really gravelly on one side, but I think it's still catchy. I think it's still a good song. And Waiting For You has this very disturbing like intro throughout the whole thing, and it sort of just explodes back into the shoegaze elements of the first song. In total, I think this accomplishes a great atmosphere and just is very tightly made. There's no filler, I don't feel like. Every song here definitely feels like, being inspired by a game you really enjoy. And I think that because of that, there's not really much to complain about here, except for maybe that little chorus on When I'm Alone There, or Well, I'm Alone There Now. And if you play Silent Hill, you'll probably really like this. But, yeah, I'd give this like I'm teetering on a 9. I think it's a 9 out of 10. Yeah. So Who Shall Its Folds Divide? This one is one that I've changed my opinion on radically. And everything starting from this point on is kind of like things change constantly of my opinions on it. And this is one that I used to think was like a top 3 Billy project. And the thing is I didn't really, when I first wrote this script and I was like making this video and I first listened to this, I was not really into the microphones or Mount Erie. And I think that is something important kind of to analyze this EP. Because on its own, when you haven't heard anything from the microphones or anything Phil Elverum's done, this EP stands on its own very well. And it kind of like shows a more experimental and interesting direction. Because, like, Billy doesn't experiment really that much on his stuff. He kind of keeps to the same structure of songs, and he kind of doesn't really go for anything too dissonant. But this is kind of the first time where he explores more sort of, dissonant work, and especially on a song like Which Angels Have Tide, it kind of, like, has this, like, falling down aspect to it. And everything here is very thoughtful, and everything kind of has a purpose to it, and its sound. In some ways, I prefer some of these songs to some microphone songs. I think True Friendship is a Gordian Knot it's good on its own, but I do feel it kind of does rip off I Want Wind to Blow a little bit too much. I'm being a little too mean here. This song isn't that much like I Want Wind to Blow. It's just a little bit similar to the microphones, but I don't think it's that big of a deal because it kind of does its own thing. And by heavenly skill, its textures wrought is just too overtly a Crow Looked at Me song. But I think Who Shall Its Folds Divide is like, on its own, it stands really well as its own thing. I mean, it's so hard to talk about because this whole EP is really good and I enjoy it so much every time I listen to it, but it's kind of like, how much of this is like Billy coming up with ideas on his own, how much of it is him getting ideas from another great musician and kind of wanting to put that onto his own music. I think that's something important, and it kind of like takes off some points because I used to think this was a 10 out of 10, but this is more like a 9 out of 10 for me. And I still think this is incredible and you should listen to it, but it's not as good as I once thought. I didn't have to go back for this one because I brought it when I went to get the other one. I have this one too. It's cool how it comes with this thing, like the thing that the Japanese albums have. Zerwee Part 2 is really good. And I think that it kind of has like aspects that I really liked when I first heard it, and then it kind of dipped in quality. But now like I'm revisiting it, and I think that it's one of his best projects. It has some things that I don't think are perfect. I think some parts of Zerwee Part 2 are a little bit repetitive, or not repetitive, but some of it feels a little bit like filler. I Wish That I Was Younger isn't my favorite. Blockbuster Video is like a little bit of a slog. I think I can forgive all that. But something that Billy has kind of spoken out about is his dissatisfaction with the production of this album. He doesn't like the way the drums or the guitars sound. And he talks about how he would want to like redo this album and give it kind of another fresh coat of paint. And I think that would do wonders for solving some of the issues I have with it. But a lot of the songs here are just like really well made from a songwriting perspective. And a lot of them kind of transcend the Weezer name. I think, this doesn't feel like Pinkerton that much, which I think was like the point, is that this Zerwee is supposed to like represent more the Blue Album, and this is supposed to represent more of Pinkerton. But you know, lyrically, these aren't very similar. And you know, the Bargain Mart, great opener, Oceans in Her Hair, another banger song. I really like the way that these become a little more dynamic. There's like key changes. They're just like kind of more like there's more going on. I like Orihime and Hikobashi, even though it's kind of like it's not my favorite really anymore. Sail Away Old Friend is really good. And my favorite on this album is definitely Pepper's Ghost. I am a sucker for motifs in songs or in albums, and Pepper's Ghost kind of like yes, this is like a purposeful album and everything kind of interconnects, and I really like that. And you know, some of the lyrics on the song are really sad, and I like how everything comes together at the end, and it's just really pretty. And I think Ludo and Hoggle is a really good closer for this album. I think it would have been a little too like sad of a note to end on Pepper's Ghost, and I think it's perfect that it ends this way. You know, I really like the Marches On intro or outro, sorry, and just yeah, everything about Zerwee Part 2 songwriting wise is really good. And I think if Billy just had more time to kind of smooth out some of the instrumental things on this album and made it more sonically kind of interesting, I think this would be like an easy 10 out of 10, maybe my favorite. But just because of that, this isn't my favorite, so I would give this a 9 out of 10. Disclaimer, the next three are basically all the same, because sometimes I like one of them more than the other, and a lot of the times they're basically all the same. I think this one is the bottom of that top three, I don't know, but Halloween 4 is so good. It's his most conceptual album. It has the most going on, like, lyrically, I think, and tying everything thematically. It's his first time where he tried doing, you know, a concept album. He did it again on the SS Krill. I think this works a lot better. And some people have talked about how this album feels like a drag, which, sure, you could argue that, because it's kind of really upsetting, this whole album. But the story is about this kid who lost a friend the year before on Halloween, and they're lamenting this person's lost, and it's kind of following the journey of how he gets lured into a graveyard and killed by some monster or something. It starts with Halloween 1994, and it's this really long kind of acoustic song, and it builds throughout the whole thing. It's kind of giving context to the beginning of this story, and I like the TV bits that start out, and it's like flipping channels. It kind of gives like an unsettling atmosphere to start it off with, but I think it really works. Then it gets followed up by Trick or Treating, which gives like even more context to kind of what's going on with like story of this girl that disappeared. And The Party is one of my absolute favorite Billy Cobb songs. I think just kind of like it's so good at kind of giving off this air of trying to enjoy yourself at a party, but something being so clearly wrong with you, and you just can't help being like upset. And it's just such a good, like, the chorus is so fantastic. The Graveyard isn't my favorite on this album, but it's still really good. And it kind of like delves more into like a spooky theme, because like, you know, the whole album is kind of just like leading up to the graveyard. It's like, we should go to the graveyard, and it finally comes. And then The Closet is so messed up, and the ending of it is so messed up, and I think that it kind of brings everything together. And even though Halloween kind of like doesn't have the same like overall upbeat, like catchy moments of his other like really good stuff, I think it kind of shows like a level of growth in the way that like he can organize an album and make everything purposeful. And just everything about this is just so good. I don't know how to like explain what makes it so good. I love the inclusion of longer songs. I think Billy should do that way more, because longer songs gives you more time to kind of like stretch out your ideas and give it more space to breathe, which is something that kind of he struggles with a little bit on some of his other projects. and I wish he would do it more because I like these longer songs. But either way, Halloween 4 is a masterpiece, and it's one of his best albums, and I would give this a 10 out of 10.
Your face makes me so miserable.
So the Bear album is one that I didn't have so high when I first put it on this list. And, the more I thought about it, the more, time I gave to, think it over, the more I realized that, this album doesn't have any skips on it, and every song is really good. I kind of just can't, help but think, man, I can't put this anywhere other than second place, because every song here is just so good. You'll find her eventually. It's this perfect opener with this slow kind of depressing atmosphere, and even the core, it's just about how you're young but you still can't find anything, and you're kind of stuck in this lonely pit. And just everything about the way that he's singing is so desperate and sad. Trust Me is a great follow-up, and it kind of has it gives the first taste of the power pop sort of vibes that this album goes for. Because even though this album isn't super conceptual or anything, it's just a great batch of songs, and it's able to kind of showcase every great aspect of Billy's songwriting and the way that he can compose just kind of fun, upbeat songs. And Trust Me is a perfect example of that. Even though the lyrics are stupid, it doesn't matter because it's just such a fun, upbeat song. The choruses, the hooks on this album are really good. I can't help but compare this to something I don't know, Is This It? Where nothing's really too complicated, but just everything just hits so good. Zuzu's Petals is another great example. Even though I think the drums are a little distracting, I think everything about the song just is so perfect about this lover's quarrel. I think Witch C's vocals are really good, and they match really well together in the final chorus. And just everything about Zuzu's Petals is mwah. High-Reth is actually something underrated that I think the slow groove of it and the lazy sounding vocals work really well, and I really like the way that it picks up at the second half where he gets louder and kind of some distortion comes in. It Takes Two to Tango, so what's that other guy doing here? This is the kind of bigger song on this album, and it's basically What Are You Doing? What Am I Doing Part 2? And it's just such a great groovy and fun song, and I cannot complain about it. Bobby Hip used to be my favorite. I really liked the kind of sad, slow story of basically BoJack Horseman. I just think even though some of the lyrics are a little edgy, it's still just so good, and it's fun to listen to. I really like the guitar solo actually, which is not something that I say very often for Billy Cobb. But I think it actually works really well. Lead the Way, I Hope You Don't Know Where You're Going kind of has Have a Nice Life vibes a little bit. It's just kind of a really good, just a good song. And it's got really heavy guitars on it. And Lost Boys Don't Bivouac Here is actually my least favorite. I think it kind of rips off Kid A little bit. It rips off, Motion Picture Soundtrack, but it kind of has its own identity near the end. I don't think it's that bad. But yeah, this whole album is just thrilling start to end. There's no filler. I love how this is only 8 songs long. It's only half an hour. There's no room for filler. And I think that helps this album immensely. So I would give this a 10 out of 10, I'll be honest. And it's just going to grow on me more. And I wish I had this on vinyl, except the shipping prices do not justify me getting just one of them. My favorite Billy Cobb album is Strokes of Incarceration, which might be a basic pick, but I don't care. I think that this album is so instrumental to his growth as an artist, and it's his first outstanding piece of music that he made. And I think a lot of that kind of has to do with just the place I was when I found this album, the way that I connected with these songs. So when I first wrote the script, I was in senior year and I was, getting ready to leave for university. This album kind of spoke to me in some of the ways that it talks about university, especially in 45 Minutes to Freedom. And I can say that even after my first year, I think that this still does speak to me in some ways. Maybe not like as much for the anxiety reasons that I had before. And I think Billy had a much worse time in his first year of college than I did university. But kind of some of the same things still apply, and kind of some of the relationship things as well. Waiting for the train station for 45 minutes is kind of just whatever. It's just an intro. 45 Minutes to Freedom through Rocky Horror is one of my favorite run of songs on any album. 45 Minutes to Freedom is such a good goddamn opening song. You know, it starts with this like weird kind of distorted acoustic guitar, and it starts with these lyrics talking about, you know, like his experiences at college and how he's not having it, and parts of it kind of like fall into, like, he starts to feel kind of the same as everyone else, and it kind of humbles him, and it feels like, you know, I've definitely felt that. And you go to a place where everyone kind of has the same goals and aspirations as you, and it's kind of like hard to like see yourself as a unique person. And then just like the absolute crushing like outro to this song, where he just like builds up this huge rage, and it's just so powerful, and I just love this song. Break the Ice is another great continuation. I think a lot of the lyrics here are kind of speaking facts in some ways. You know, he mentions a girl who thinks that like she's too like crazy for Billy, and like he could not keep up with her, and it's kind of just like this moment of like, well, like, what the fuck. I really like kind of like the way that like it like goes through the motions, you know. Then there's the part that's like, she's got too many problems for me. It's talking about just like, you know, I don't know, but I really like the last outro verse, like, I hope when you're sad you'll tell me your life, I know when you're mad, you know what I'm like, you're the light of my life, I've given you everything you ever wanted. That's so spitting facts, Billy Cobb. And it helps that the instrumentation is also really good. It's engaging, and he uses more kind of harmonies in his music, which, you know, is not something he would do very often before, and I think it works wonders. And then Rocky Horror is potentially my favorite Billy Cobb song. It has such an incredible chorus. It has some of the best vocals and some of the best lyrics that I've ever heard on, you know, one of his projects or any project. I just think it's such a great song to introduce to someone to his music, and I think it's, yeah, one of his best ones. Happy Times starts out a little strangely, but I think it really picks up in the part where it kind of like is teetering on this edge. It's another moment where it kind of feels like the microphones. It reminds me a lot of the song The Glow Part 2. And it goes into, I really like the guitar riff for the outro, and I think the lyrics are really good in the way that he's singing them. Radio Waves is really strange. I think it's like one of the weirdest songs that he's ever made. He even talks about how he has no idea what this is about. But I still like it. I think it's catchy. Patience is a really long song, and I think it kind of goes through some motions where he had good intentions with what he was talking about, but I think kind of like at that point in his life, he didn't really have a full grasp at like what he was talking about here. It's about kind of like feminism, but maybe not in like the best way of going about it. But I still think it's a really catchy song, and I think it's really, you know, even though it's a slow burn, I think it really works well. And Houses and Buildings is a perfect outro, and it kind of has this like sad energy of being away from home and you want to return. And it's a simple idea, but I think it works really well, and I like how it just like explodes at the end. Yeah, so you can still tell that this is like an early album of his where he's still figuring some stuff out. I think it's an excellent showcase at like his best qualities in his songwriting, and I think the first half of this album especially is really, really good. I do think that some people argue about which version is better, the 2018 version or the 2020 version. I do think that the 2020 version works better. I do like the guitar tones more, but I can definitely see why some people would prefer like kind of the more rough around the edges sound of the 2018 one. That's my favorite. And obviously the last three kind of like go back and forth. This is a 10 out of 10, obviously. And yeah, that's my favorite Billy Cobb albums. And, you know, if he makes more, I might review them. But for as it stands right now, you know, he hasn't reviewed his own stuff again. So I beat him to the chase of reviewing everything. I hope that covers everything. Fuck, this was long. I can't believe I recorded this all. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'm probably gonna do more of these. I might do one for Kanye because I recently just listened to everything that he made. And yeah, see ya.